The truth about science. What you are about to discover is that nearly everything we accept and believe about the universe we live in is not true. Let's start at the beginning. What we are taught about the world around us, our history as a species, the history of the Earth and the universe, our science, physics, anthropology, evolution, religion, etc., is a conglomeration of falsehoods. And yet, it is these and other disciplines from which we construct our worldview and seek to understand our life and purpose. We can never arrive at the truth by walking down a highway of lies. For example, here is just a tiny portion of the erroneous assumptions our science, physics, and natural history profess as truths. The speed of light is constant. That is not true. This is the most important error in science. The universe is 14 billion years old. That is complete and total nonsense. Dinosaurs went extinct millions of years ago. That is ridiculous. When you think about the number of years they supposedly ruled the Earth and the number of dinosaurs that would have lived and died on the Earth during that time, simple common sense tells you their science is hogwash. Humans evolved from lower species. Ridiculous. It is impossible to believe evolution if you actually take the time to think about it. Early man was a primitive hunter-gatherer. Absurd. The physical evidence of advanced civilization before the flood is abundant and worldwide. That is just a drop in the ocean of all of the false assertions which our science, physics, and natural history are built upon. The people we call experts, scientists, and educators accept the above statements and many more equally flawed declarations as axioms not to be questioned. They build their science and philosophy on that foundation, and then what they have built upon that foundation becomes the narrative. Science and philosophy seek to explain the world around us by putting information in story form. How the universe began, the Big Bang story, what matter is made of, the story of how atoms were formed moments after the Big Bang, how life began, the story of how life accidentally began in a primordial soup. Is there a God? The everything began with the Big Bang and evolved from there to what exists today story and so on. Those explanations in story form become the narrative. New discoveries that fit the narrative receive positive peer reviews, grants, Nobel Prizes, promotions, and fame. New discoveries that do not fit the narrative receive skepticism, peer ridicule, possible career damage, and rejection out of hand. Anyone challenging the generally accepted narrative is quickly labeled a crackpot. Today, we have an accepted narrative of the history of everything from the Big Bang until now that borders on the ridiculous. This false narrative guides our formal sciences, natural sciences, and social sciences and branches out into our everyday lives. Our literature writes about the false narrative. Our schools teach our children this nonsense. Even our social values are affected by what we believe about our origins, history, and the universe we live in. Our brightest scholars waste their lives trying to build on this narrative, and so it persists. This false narrative persists principally because of pride and money. It really is that simple. People in academia invest their lives and reputations in their research, teachings, lectures, and other endeavors. Institutions, public and private, have untold billions of dollars invested in research facilities, museums, universities, and more. All this investment has been justified by the narrative. It depends on the narrative for its continued existence. If the narrative is proven wrong, everyone involved will look like fools. Politicians, scientists, researchers, and countless teachers and other members of academia would have to admit they are wrong and have been wrong all their professional lives. People are too invested socially, emotionally, and monetarily to abandon their position on the narrative. Even when faced with evidence to the contrary, they fiercely defend the lie so as not to be proven wrong. That is the power of pride. In order to keep this post short, I am not going to go into many examples, but I cannot resist this one. Consider the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. Let's see what they say about their museum on their own website. About. The world's most popular natural history museum is dedicated to understanding the natural world and our place in it. Delve into the fascinating story of our planet, from its fiery beginnings through billions of years of transformation, and explore life on Earth through exhibitions and activities, collection of objects, and research that happens in the lab and in the field. The museum is larger than 18 football fields and is home to the largest natural history collection in the world. As you walk through their beautiful exhibits, including the Hall of Human Origins, National Fossil Hall, Deep Time, Mammals, Ocean Hall, and much more. They carefully tell you the narrative described above. It is all wrong, but the exhibits are great. False narratives are pervasive primarily because man in his pride seeks to explain the universe and everything in it, based on his own theories, observations, and critical thinking. The error in that is man's theories are flawed, his observations are flawed, and his critical thinking is flawed. Since the 17th century, man has relied upon the scientific method to advance his ideas and explanations of the universe and everything that goes on in it. We call it science, and once accepted, it moves from theory to fact. In this COVID-infested social environment we live in today, all we hear is follow the science and follow the science. We are told to put our trust in science, trust our very health and lives to science. But science has produced the false narratives I have been writing about in this post. The false narrative about our universe and everything that goes on in it is being taught from pre-kindergarten through graduate school as fact. Escaping from just academia, it now influences broad areas of society, even going as far as contradicting religions. Governments are now using science to mandate human behavior. COVID-19 is just one example, but there are hundreds more. So I ask you, is the scientific method authoritative? Can science derived by way of the scientific method be used to legislatively force humans to behave in a certain way? I have already stated that the above narrative constructed by way of the scientific method is false. In the articles I post on this website, I will present the evidence to argue my position. In doing so, I will show that the scientific method is not authoritative, and therefore legislation based on science has no authority derived from that science.